What's up, Gator Nation? Welcome into the latest Gators Online Show. Zach Alaverdi and Nick Del Torre joining you, one from the state of Florida, the other from the state of Nebraska. Nicholas is back in Omaha as the Gators have made it back after winning their 9th straight Super Regional under Kevin O'Sullivan in a ridiculous run. And Nick is coming off best baseball game he ever covered, and for me, best baseball game I think I've ever watched. I haven't watched a lot of Florida baseball games, but that was probably the most entertaining and drama-filled game that I've seen. And we will get into that, obviously, on today's episode and preview Florida's trip to the College World Series, but we will also talk football as well. Nick, how was your trip out to Omaha?
Easy trip. Salute to American Airlines. Really no issues.
All right.
Salute to my wife. Got me exit row seats when she booked it for me while I was driving home from Clemson, and back in my summer home of Omaha, Nebraska, with 2 games today, 2 games tomorrow, and we'll see Florida and Texas A&M Saturday night.
Man, it's been quite the whirlwind for Florida baseball this past month, and we'll obviously get into this College World Series and who Florida will be matched up again. But before we jump into football, man, I do got to have you just talk to us here to start the show about that game at Clemson and what was one of the best baseball games, I'm sure, in school history. And I know you said the best you've ever covered.
Yeah, it had a little bit of everything. I mean, they pitched to Jack Caglione. He hits a ball 400 feet in the first inning. You get guys ejected in the first inning. A benches clearing moment, shoving it first. You get coaches being ejected, including Jack Leggett, who is going to be a Hall of Fame coach and was the coach at Clemson who hired Kevin O'Sullivan to be his pitching coach, giving Kevin O'Sullivan his first D1 job. Tim Corbin, Vanderbilt's head coach, and Eric Bakich were all on that staff at Clemson together. So Jack Leggett had an eye for talent, that's for sure. He gets tossed. Eric Bakich gets tossed. Florida's up in the game. Clemson ties it in the 9th. Florida goes back down after a home run in the 9th, and then they walk off. The game just had everything. Cam Canarella made one of the best catches, kind of detailed, more in-depth. I used to play outfield, so it's a little nerdy of an explanation, but if you're into that kind of stuff, why I thought it was the best catch outside of, just an over-the-shoulder catch. But it was just a sensational game, and I got a lot of text messages, Zach, being like, man, that game was 5 hours. And I was like, I've been at games that are 3 hours on the dot that felt a lot longer than that because there was just so much happening on Sunday in Clemson. It was a really entertaining baseball game, really well played by both teams.
Yeah, I mean, I was following along on my phone. I was out of town, and I was able to keep attention and keep watching on my phone without feeling like it was, too hard to watch and follow along. So just incredible run by this team and Sully and the staff. And I don't think anybody saw this coming, including you, Nick. But as you've been writing the past couple of weeks, they let the Gators get hot. And now they're in Omaha. And we're looking forward to your coverage out there. And if you guys aren't subscribed to Gators Online to read all of Nick's premium baseball coverage, make sure that you take advantage. This is the time of year where you want to be locked in, not only to him, but of course it's official visit season, Friday Night Lights next week as well. So a lot to be paying attention to. And before you know it, it'll be SEC Media Days. So you want to be subscribed to Gators Online right now. And if you're not, you can use our promo code that we've got going. This is an exclusive offer just for you folks that are listening to the Gators Online Show and the Geo Recruiting Show. We're only talking about this here. So you can go to sign up with the promo code UF1 and you'll get 2 months of premium access for just $1. So Nick will have a ton of stuff coming out of Omaha. Not everything that he covers makes it in a story or on Twitter. He posts a lot of stuff on the message board. So you guys want to make sure that you're locked into that. And looking forward to seeing what the Gators can do. And we will circle back around toward the end of the show to preview the Gators trip out there. We will kick off now our football discussions. A lot of different things that we can get into over the past week, Nick. I think maybe the most interesting news that came out, or at least one of the items that came out, was Phil Steele putting out his preseason picks for not only All SEC but All American. Shout out to the specialists, Jeremy Crawshaw and Rocco Underwood, getting some preseason All SEC, or excuse me, All American love from Phil Steele. 8 Gators named preseason All SEC. Now this is 4 teams that he names preseason, so it's it's a big list that you can potentially make. I'm trying to look for the Gators. They only had one guy that was a 14 guy. Montreal Johnson, first team preseason All SEC. That's not the only first team preseason All SEC pick that he's received. We'll get into that. Nick, as you look at this list, thoughts and I guess the biggest takeaway, obviously, from this and why we're even going to talk about it is a noticeable name that was omitted from the preseason picks here.
I think first off, there's just people are just down on Florida to begin with, and when you look through some of the stuff on Lindy's about Billy Napier, they're just down on Florida. I think Eugene Wilson's a guy. I think Graham Mertz is a guy. But there's gonna be questions, and I know people get mad about preseason rankings and stuff like that, but it's like preseason rankings, preseason projections are based on what you did last season, and what Florida did last season wasn't good enough. Did you feel good about what Florida did last year when the season was over? And we have some time now. We get into lying season, Zach. We get into spring, get into summer, but like preseason projections are based on what you've done and stats and a little bit of a projection, but it's based on what you've done. So I'm not surprised that
you're not surprised by the Eugene Wilson omission, though. Out of 4 teams,
I think he's the one player, but it's also a really loaded position in the SEC. But like,
I don't know, man. I mean,
Graham Mertz, in my opinion, Graham Mertz and like Eugene Wilson are probably the guys that have earned a ton of respect. PFF's been really high on Jake Slaughter, a little bit higher on the offensive line as a whole. But I mean, like, I think we know what Eugene Wilson is. I think he will end up on a postseason All SEC.
Sure, I can understand Mertz even with 4 teams not making it. Like, I can understand
Dart and Beck, and
I don't think that was that much of a snub. Jake Slaughter, again, like you said, PFF is really high on him, but he's also not a household name using their words.
Yeah.
So it's not a surprise that he wouldn't. But Eugene Wilson, like, PFF has him as the number 4 rated receiver returning in the SEC. 2 of those guys didn't play in the SEC last year. Mm-hmm. And I think Lindy Sports, which we'll get into in their preview of the Gators and then preview of college football as a whole, they ranked Wilson the number 16 receiver nationally. So to not see him in an all SEC preseason pick with 4 teams, I think that's a little bit of an oversight there. Obviously, we've seen Eugene. We know what he's capable of, and so that jumps out at us. But Phil Steele, he's obviously very reputable, and there's a reason why when he puts out his picks and projections that they send out press releases for them. So, like we said, Jeremy Crawshaw not only got some All-American love, but he was named first team preseason All-SEC by Phil Steele, and also Montreal Johnson getting a nod there. Shamar James, Jason Marshall earned second team preseason honors along with Rocco Underwood. Some third team picks in Austin Barber and Trey Smack, and then Jordan Castell, a fourth team preseason All SEC selection. So that's kind of how Phil Steele sees some of the Gators' top players heading into this year. And again, I think to me, the only major surprise there is not having Eugene Wilson anywhere on that list. Not as surprised by Graham, and certainly not by Jake. Like, Graham is at least more of a household name, but there's quarterbacks that you can, justify putting ahead of him. So I think PFF had him ranked as like the 7th best returning quarterback in the SEC. So that sits about right. Well, we mentioned Lindy Sports, and They also came out with their preseason magazine. It has hit the shelves. Always exciting, Nick, when you see that happen.
Love the anonymous coaching section. That's what I always turn to.
Man.
What are these anonymous quotes? Is what I tune in for there, Zach.
Yeah, it's good to see that stuff come to light. Of course, according to Brian Harsin, that stuff never happens, Nick. They don't do that. Well, before we get to some of the details from this preseason magazine, do want to give a shout out to myperfectfranchise.net. If you're ready to leave the corporate rat race for the American dream, looking for a side hustle while working your current job, wanting to diversify, build wealth, and or leave a legacy, Andy can help. He's a franchise consultant as well as a franchise owner and helps people find franchises that fit their skill sets, financial requirements, time to commit, and more. His services are 100% free, and he's here to help if you have any questions about business ownership with franchises. You can learn more and contact Andy at any time at myperfectfranchise.net or calling or texting him at 404-973-9901. And Lindy Sports magazine has come out, and a lot of preseason love from this publication for Montrell Johnson. They also give him first team preseason All-SEC honors in their magazine. They rank him as the number 14th running back nationally and one of Florida's top NFL draft prospects for 2025. So a lot of love for Johnson. And as I mentioned earlier, they rank Eugene Wilson the 16th receiver nationally. And I want to say they also, they had Crawshaw, of course, ranked as the number 3 punter nationally. But as Nick alluded to, look, they don't hide the fact in their preview of Florida that Billy is on the hot seat and there's a lot of pressure facing him. They had a ranking of coaches on the hot seat this year in 7 total. They put Napier number 2 on that list behind Sam Pittman, and they described Napier's seat as scorching. And the comment that they left next to that section for Napier was boosters need more bang for their Gator bucks than 2 losing seasons.
Clever there, Zach.
I mean, how would you describe Napier's seat going into this year from your standpoint? I don't know if scorching is the best description, but I mean, he's got to deliver results in 2024.
Yeah, I mean, this is the 4th coach I've covered. I know what it looks like when a coach feels like the walls are closing in. Will Muschamp, start there. Will Muschamp, after losing to Georgia Southern in the way that 2013 happened, he knew, hey, we've got to win a bunch of ball games in 14. And you could tell that just by the way they act. I remember when Florida beat Georgia that year, and we were all sitting there like, all right, he's going to lose to Georgia and he'll get fired this year. And you remember this, Zach. He walked into the press conference and pulled, the invisible monkey off of his back. He finally beat Georgia. I think they lost the next week and he was fired. But
the HBC did him in.
You can tell when things are starting to go that way. Dan Mullen got very, very cagey, testy towards the end. Jim McElwain's was just a self-destruction, really.
Let's say, Nick, you tried to have you banned.
Dan? No, Dan. Yeah, Dan tried to have me banned. That didn't work out. But he's getting paid a bunch of money to drink Celsius and windsurf. So it's good for Dan. Billy Napier is not acting at all like a coach who is concerned about his job status.
Good point.
That's what I get. Now, my opinion, you're 11-14. If you go 7-5 against this schedule, you're under 500 after 3 years, and that's tough to sell. I think, to me, I've maybe softened a little bit on, like, there is a certain number he has to win because you have to be at least 500 after 3 years, or you shouldn't be the coach at Florida. And I wrote a story about it a week or 2 ago, and I was like, I don't know that even if you go 6-6, that it's like an instant firing. What do those 6 look like? Like if Florida goes 9-3, but the 3 losses are to the 3 in-state teams, or like you lose to Miami, FSU, and Georgia, like people are happy that they're 9-3. A 9-3 Florida might be playoff contenders, but you don't feel good about losing to those 3 rivals. So to me, it's really, what are the losses? Do you go and lose by another 20 points to make it, a net negative 60 points to Georgia in 3 years? Do you go to the 40 acres and get blown out by Texas? Or do you look competitive? Are you winning a road game in Knoxville? Are you getting over the Kentucky hump? Are you showing progress? Because I really do think, and I almost feel like I'm just like parroting what they're saying in the building, but I really do believe this is the best roster they've had. It's unfortunate that it's against the best schedule, and then you just run it back next year with an away game at Miami, swap USF for UCF, and a trip to your long-standing historical rival, Texas A&M. Thank you, SEC, for shipping the Gators back out there. I look forward to going to the first time Georgia ever goes to College Station. I'll make sure I get there for that game.
2034, Nick.
But I don't know if there's if there's a number. But I said all that in the beginning to say I've seen what coaches look like when they know, okay, job's on the line. Like it's just an added level of pressure, because you can say what you want about these contracts. Like Jimbo Fisher is making something like $26,000 a day to just not show up at Texas A&M. Just like stay away. We will send you $26,000 for every day that you don't show up on campus. Please just leave. So like I said, the best job in the world's fired head SEC football coach, fired head Division I football coach. But like that's not what these guys think about. So it's not like Billy Napier doesn't care if he gets fired because he's going to get a bunch of money. That's not the competitive nature it takes to be a coach at this level. That doesn't allow you to think like that. It probably softens the blow a little bit, but it doesn't help you. But Billy Napier doesn't and is not acting like a coach that's worried about losing his job at all.
Well, speaking of Billy Napier's nature, that was called into question in this preview where I believe that they do this with every single team that they preview. They get an opinion from an opposing coach who speaks anonymously about said program. Well, they spoke with an opposing anonymous coach about Napier and the Gators in the Lindy Sports preseason publication. Here's what they had to say. Again, this is an anonymous quote. We don't know who it is. We think that it's not Kirby Smart, Nick, although that would be quite the thing to do if you're talking anonymously, was address yourself in third person. But again, this was whoever said this didn't hold back, and we can unpack this and respond to some of the criticisms here. But here was the full quote coming in hot. Napier got his butt handed to him in recruiting this year. He got poached at the end. I think Billy is really smart and a good coach, but he's too nice for that place. I don't think he has control of the players. You need a Nick Saban at Florida. Billy is not a huge disciplinarian. That's what happened with Muschamp and McElwain and Mullen. We'll address that. Florida has been mismanaged by every head coach they've had since Urban Meyer. Kirby Smart at Georgia built a championship-level defense first. Alabama built the championship-level defense first under Saban. You've got to get the defense right. Billy Napier hasn't played Florida Gator defense. Florida opens with Miami and Gainesville. If the Gators don't win that game, Napier might not make it to October. That is a huge game for Billy. A lot to unpack there, especially from that first graph. Nick, your reaction to this anonymous quote from an opposing coach?
I know Will Muschamp quotes when I read them, Zach. That's that. Like I get it. Yeah, you need to play better defense. Billy Napier doesn't coach the defense. The coaches that they named that are head coaches are defensive coaches. When Will Muschamp took over at Florida, Florida's defense was nasty. But you had so many safeties on scholarship that you didn't have enough players to play offense. Couldn't have enough offensive linemen to field a spring game. There's balance in it, and the rules are changing to benefit offenses. I don't think that you build There's multiple ways to build championship teams. First off, you need a great punter.
Get that out of the way first.
Get that. I mean, that's step one. Go to Australia, find a dude. You can build a team that doesn't have a great defense, and you can just outscore people. You can outrun, run people out of the building. We've seen that work. We've seen teams who probably you go back to the Ravens in 2000. Trent Dilfer has a Super Bowl ring because of Ray Lewis and Tony Siragusa and Ed Reed and a nasty defense. But the game has changed, and all of the rules are being changed to make the game more offensive because points are fun and points are exciting, and people tune in for points. And when you get big TV numbers because people are tuning in because it's an enjoyable game, you get more advertising dollars. So we've seen the changing of the game of football to make it more fun for people to watch. So I don't know that building a team defense first is necessary. But I keep bringing them up. But I enjoyed watching some of those Will Muschamp defenses. So I wouldn't mind Florida getting back to playing Florida level of defense. But I don't know. To me, that's just a defensive coach being like, you have to build your team defense first.
What do you think? What do you think more about the comments about he's too nice for that place and doesn't have control of the players?
I think he does have control of the players.
I caught because if we're just talking about like a player arrest standpoint and guys following team rules, like that has not been an issue under Napier, knock on wood.
Yeah.
I know they had an offseason arrest with the freshman speeding and got into an accident, but like that was the first hiccup that they've really had in 2+ years. I mean, Richardson had a speeding ticket, but whether he's too nice, if you're going to be critical of his demeanor, and I mean, I guess that's fair. I feel like I've got a sense for Billy's competitiveness. He's not a rah guy, but like he's got some fire to him, and we've seen him push back in press conferences at times, Nick. So I just what you thought of the criticism and saying that he's not a huge disciplinarian, suggesting that maybe that's what Florida needs or is missing.
Yeah, I just don't agree with it. I think he really has changed the program. To an extreme. It's like he really believes, great men win. Great men make great football players. Great football players win football games. And the Gator made stuff they do, all that stuff, and I think it's great for players. I think it's really expensive when I'm looking at how many guys flew to Tokyo.
Yeah.
But then you look at shout out to my guy Corey Knowles. He just interviewed Deontay Thompson, and Deontay Thompson was like, Urban Meyer went into every ghetto in the Southeast and grabbed the baddest dude out of every ghetto, and then had Jesus lead them. And I'm like, yeah, like if you look at that, those Urban Meyer teams, like those weren't some great guys off the field. Those weren't like leaders in Alachua County, Zach. They got kicked out of downtown. The football team couldn't go to the bars downtown because of the way they were behaving. So like, I don't know that great men necessarily or a team of choir boys makes a great football team, but Billy Napier believes in that. So they have cracked down on a lot of things that the previous staff wasn't doing.
Sure.
And I think there is a lot of both accountability, but what the culture that they want to instill is accountability in the locker room. You don't need the coach to be the one every single time saying you're doing this or disciplining. If you can build a culture where the leaders on your team are disciplining and the players are disciplining themselves because somebody's slipping, somebody's not meeting the standard that we have been taught and that we hold ourselves to. I talked to Ahmad Black, and Ahmad Black says he started at UF the same week they did their championship celebration, and he goes, and right after that, the guys come and they let me know what I can do, what I can't do, what I can get away with, what to not even think about trying to get away with, and then the standard. And I think that's where Billy Napier is trying to get, where you have that kind of accountability among the players themselves. It doesn't always need to be from the coaches.
Sure. And, you know, I think that a lot of this statement from this anonymous opposing coach, I think, is valid. Obviously, Florida needs to get better on defense. This Florida-Miami game is huge for Billy. You know, the comment about Florida being mismanaged by every coach they've had since Meyer, I mean, that's kind of hard to disagree with that. The one thing I will, you know, push back, you know, to say that Napier got his butt handed to him in recruiting, I think that's, and that he got poached, I think that's a little bit of an exaggeration. You know, did they have a lot of guys exit their class toward the end? Yes. Were all of those situations where they got poached or the staff got its butt handed to them? That didn't happen. I mean, if you follow Gators Online, you followed our reporting, you know that. Now, did they lose some guys? Absolutely. Wardell Mack, Xavier Filsaime, Nasir Johnson. Those are guys that they wanted in the class and wanted to sign, and they weren't able to keep. But that wasn't the case with everybody. You know, a Darius Hayes who went to Miami, that was not someone that they lost. Kendall Jackson that went to Texas A&M. Isaiah Williams that decided to flip to A&M on signing day because he got a huge NIL payday that Florida wasn't going to match. I mean, I don't know. I mean, when you keep DJ Lagway committed, keep LJ McCray committed, land some pieces down the stretch, and then now
keep Miles Graham.
Yes, you also have to factor in transfer portal because that is part of a recruiting cycle and a recruiting class. And now with winter and spring portals done, like we would say Florida had a great transfer class. So I think, did their recruiting go exactly the way that they wanted, and did they get every guy that they wanted? No. They definitely lost a few guys at the end, but they probably kept their most important pieces. And some of the things that I've highlighted in the past, Nick, these guys that they lost that stung the most, they're from out of state. Like you lost a kid from Georgia that decided to stay in state and go to Georgia. You lost a kid from Texas that decided to stay in state and go to Texas. You lost Jermonte Waller, to Ole Miss. I mean, Auburn. Things like that are going to happen, when you mess around sometimes with these out-of-state kids and you don't have a great season. I think, though, this finish for Florida in the 2024 cycle, both from the high school ranks and from the transfer portal, it could have been a lot worse, especially coming off of a 5-7 season. They could have lost some pieces that really would have had you feeling down about this team and about this recruiting. But that was obviously, I think, the biggest takeaway from the preview that Lindy Sports had about the Gators was that anonymous quote from a coach. We won't get into all this. You can go to GatorsOnline.com and read, some of the highlights that we picked out. Obviously, encourage you to go get the full issue from your latest magazine stand or Publix, whereas where I got it from. But they really cover a lot of different things for Florida: primary strengths, potential problems, emerging stars. Obviously, they labeled Graham Mertz as their MVP, Pup Howard as their top newcomer, and interesting, their preseason rankings, Nick, from Lindy Sports. The Gators have 8 preseason top 20 teams on their schedule. 8 preseason top 20 teams: Georgia, Texas, Ole Miss, Florida State, LSU, Tennessee, Miami, which Lindy Sports has at 17, and Texas A&M, they rank 19. Florida is ranked 37th nationally and picked to finish 12th in the SEC by Lindy Sports. So they're not very high on the Gators as a team, and they definitely think that this is a tough slate for Billy. So they're going to have that is one set of doubters that they're going to have to prove wrong in 2024, Nick. And speaking of that schedule and that slate, we learned the kickoff times this week for the 2024 schedule. That came out this week. And again, a lot of folks, Nick, as you know, were hoping for night games in the Swamp and a chance to really, put on a great environment when you get those teams under the lights in the Swamp. But unfortunately for the Gators, that's
Sanford under the lights, Zach.
That's not happening in SEC play or certainly even in the Miami game. We already knew that Miami was going to be a 3:30 kick, but we found out here this past week and also in recent weeks, Texas A&M is going to be 3:30. Florida, Ole Miss. We think of the classic 2015 night game in the Swamp. Ole Miss came in ranked number 3, and the Gators just blew them out under the lights. Not happening this year. That will be a noon game on November 23rd.
Senior day noon.
Yeah. Texas is a noon game, which is probably a good thing for Florida.
11 a.m. local.
Well, then maybe not.
I told you, Zach, that is Drake's newest single for his country album, 11 a.m. in Austin.
And then, the only night game that Florida could potentially have in the Swamp for a big game is LSU, although, I guess you could call Kentucky a big game because the Gators have to win that one. But LSU and Kentucky could both be 3:30 or 8 p.m. That's a flex time right now, as is the game at Tennessee. So, Nick,
I like that they're doing this now, though, Zach. Like,
yeah,
typically for a fan who wants to go to Gainesville to see the Kentucky game, they wouldn't know what time the game was until like October 13th, 6 days before. And now, listen, we don't have a time for Kentucky, but for somebody, let's say, that's driving 7 hours, and they're like, hey, or driving 5 hours, I can do a 5-hour drive back and forth and not have to get a hotel, but I don't know what time the game is, and I might need a hotel if it's going to be super late. It allows people to start planning for things, and that, that flex schedule where it's either like, hey, it's noon or 3:30, or it's 3:30 or 8 p.m. I think that's fine, and that will obviously, you won't get probably those kickoff times until you start to see what's happening, because if Florida and LSU are both going well, if let's say Florida's 7-2 going into that game and LSU's 7-2, that's an 8:30 game.
Yeah,
that's an 8:30 game. And if both teams are struggling, hey, throw them in the 3. Well, I don't even know. You might throw them at 8:30 on, I guess, SEC Network.
Yeah,
you're not going to put two struggling LSU and Florida, with 5 wins each, in the 3:30 ABC slot.
Sure. Now, Mississippi State, Florida's first road game of the year and first SEC road trip, will also be a noon kick. And then, so the Gators have, let's see, 3 true road games, and right now 2 of them are at noon. We do not know the time yet for Florida State.
That is because it's at Florida State. That's an ACC decision.
And then the Gators will get the nights at night. That will be either a 6 p.m. Somewhere between 6 to 8 p.m. is when that kickoff will be. So that is one that will be under the lights. That will be UCF Super Bowl, no doubt. And I'm looking forward to the slate, Nick. We will obviously unpack this a lot more once we get closer to the season and preview these matchups and key games. But I know I speak for you and all the other sports writers who had to suffer through a lot of night games last year that we are not too upset about some of these noon kicks and 3:30 starts.
Yeah, night games are late nights for us. You're up till I don't leave the park or the park. I'm still in baseball, but I don't leave the stadium until like after 1 a.m. on those nights. So it's not bad, but I really would have liked to see Miami be a night game. I think it's going to be brutally hot for the fans. Like, listen, Miami's down there in Coral Gables practicing. They're not going to be worried about the heat or humidity. They're running in it the same, but I think you're just going to get fans getting scorched out there at 3:30. I think that would have been a great game TV ratings wise, as well. Rivalry under the lights in the Swamp. So that's tough, but I get it. I get it. It's kind of like what I said kind of like what I said earlier about these are being picked based on projections.
Yeah.
And after 2 years, you look around, you're like, hey, we'll put LSU Texas or LSU Oklahoma. I'm not sure which one LSU plays. Like, we'll put them on in a better spot. Florida, Mississippi State, that's got noon written all over it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the cowbells for the first time. Have you been there? Yeah, you went in 18.
Yeah, I went in 18. It'll be. I don't think I'll be there for that one, Zach. I think I will be a new dad that week. You'll be working on your own in Starkville. Not upset about that. I think my daughter's first gift to me, Zach, will be not having me go to Starkville.
She's looking out for you, huh?
Yeah. Come back to me later when I'm dealing with newborns crying in diapers, and we'll see. I'll let you know if I think she's looking out for me or not at that point.
Yeah, it's man, I'm telling you, man, this season is going to sneak up on us. We're getting ready, obviously, for summertime and SEC media days, and once that starts happening, that football's right around the corner. So, but baseball is in full swing right now, pun intended, and we're going to get to this next ad read, and then we will preview this College World Series for the Florida Gators and what to expect. Before we do that, I want to give a shout out to Prairie Dental Center. The doctor is a UF grad who's practiced in Gainesville for 3 decades and developed a deep understanding of how to diagnose and treat various dental problems, along with advanced skills and knowledge to provide better care for his patients. If you have dental concerns or just need a cleaning, Prairie Dental Center offers a wide range of options to meet your needs. Give their office a call at 352-373-3431. Tell them Gators Online sent you, and your new patient exam will be free. And they even do Invisalign. And if you're trying to get your teeth straight and don't want to do braces, I just brought my son there today to get his last tray. And he's got the straight teeth for high school, Nick, when you need it the most.
Got him right. You got him right. Invisalign is the way to go. I mean, man, we had regular braces and getting all kinds of different color rubber bands. Invisalign, way to go.
Yeah, my other son, Sean, he had to go the braces route. So Prairie Dental Center hooked up Junior with some Invisalign, and now he's got his teeth looking good. So shout out to Prairie Dental Center. And if you're in the area and need some dental work, make sure that you go give them a shout. And Nick, you are here. I didn't think that you would be here. I don't think you thought you would be here. Heck, I don't even know if the Gators thought that they would be here, but you are in Omaha once again, my friend, back after the Gators and made a run all the way to the finals last year. And as our friend Scott Carter put out this week, this is the fewest wins that the Gators have ever had when they've advanced to Omaha. Incredible to think about how they've gotten here. We'll get into this matchup with Texas A&M and what to expect from the Gators, but just talk about, obviously, we went through the Super Regional and that amazing win over Clemson to punch their ticket, but what does it mean for this team to be here before we get into the matchups and the games to come?
Yeah, I'm trying to find the words to write for a story for it, because it was interesting. The same people work in the College World Series. Like when you're in the tunnels, entering through the media and the team entrances, it's always the same people. You see the same faces. And one of the guys who works for the Omaha World Herald remembered me this year, and that was kind of a trip to be like, oh, this guy only writes for the paper here, and I've been here covering Florida enough that he remembered me. I'm walking through the tunnel with Kevin O'Sullivan and a guy who does security standing in front of the doors of the clubhouses, says, "Coach, welcome back, Sully." And I'm just like, the people here recognize him. And it's so hard to get wrapped up in. It happens a lot. Like Tuesday night, you lose to JU, and it's this team stinks, and it's really hard. Baseball's a really hard game. It's a game where you can fail 70% of the time, and you're considered a very successful hitter. It's really hard to get here, and the fact that the people at the stadium who live and work in Omaha are familiar with the people who are covering the baseball team and the baseball team because of how often Kevin O'Sullivan gets here, I think is incredible. FSU has been here 24 times now, has never won it. Hadn't been here since 19 in Mike Martin. May he rest in peace. In 11's last year. Haven't been here in 5 years. It's special to be able to get here and then to win it is something different. So I think if I pull up the schedule now, Zach, I think in February, I thought Florida, I might be here. I think if we even go into March, going down, beating LSU, lose to Florida State in Jacksonville. You've lost Florida State twice now, but then you beat Mississippi State. I think all the way through March, I thought, you know what, there's a chance I get here. And then I will be honest, we get into April, get swept by Missouri, lose 2 of 3 to South Carolina at home, lose to Vanderbilt 2 out of 3, lose to Arkansas 2 out of 3, and I'm like, what is happening? Did not think I would be here. You can go all the way to when they lost senior day to Kentucky, and I'm like, all right, they got 4 games left. Florida went to Athens, having to at minimum beat Georgia on the road, a top 15 Georgia. They get that done after losing the first game. They lost Thursday night in Athens, and I went, well, start planning some off-season stuff with the wife. And then, just like Ole Miss in 2022, Zach, their saying was, don't let the Rebs get hot. Ole Miss was the 64th team, ranked 64th team to make the NCAA tournament in 2022. And the Rebs got hot and won the school's first national championship. Florida, I would not be surprised if Florida makes a run and wins this entire tournament. I won't be surprised if they go 0-2. They face a really talented Texas A&M team. I think it would be awesome to see a Florida State final. They're on opposite ends of the bracket. I think that would be an awesome final. But I think Florida's it's interesting because I've asked this question to the guys and they don't agree with it. But I think Florida's kind of playing with house money. The way that the season has gone.
Oh, I agree. I agree with that 100%.
They respond saying, "This is Florida. We expect to be here or competing to be here every year." And I was like, "Well,
your record this year says otherwise."
Yeah. And we knew that they were talented. They just needed it to click. And maybe I think they've essentially been playing playoff baseball for a month now because they had to stay above 500 every game. Playing USF on the last Tuesday before Kentucky was a almost must-win situation. And if they don't win that game, they finish at 500 on the season and not eligible. I think there's a number of games you can look at for the lost 1-run games, and you're like, you could add another 15 wins to the schedule, but that's not what they were. So, to me, it was it's been a fun run, a frustrating season for sure. So if you're listening to this and you're like, Nick, you forgot what they put us through in April. Listen, man, I was there. I was at the ballpark. I get it. But I think it almost makes, and I asked Kevin O'Sullivan this yesterday, I think it almost makes you appreciate more the fact that they are here based on the trials and tribulations that they've gone through this season.
No doubt. And now they will face a familiar foe on Saturday night at 7 p.m. on ESPN. The Gators going up against number 4 Texas A&M, and this is a rematch of the Gators SEC opening weekend, and the Gators took 2 out of 3 against the Aggies. These teams have never faced each other in Omaha, but a lot of neutral site matchups in Hoover. What did you take away from that first matchup, Nick, and how the Aggies improved since then, 49-13 on the year?
Yeah, Texas A&M is a great baseball team. The lineup is super deep, up and down. They lost an All-American, Braden Montgomery. Broke his ankle, unfortunately, in the Super Regional. Won't be able to play. And they aren't throwing their ace against Florida, which I think is surprising.
Justin Lampkin. Liam Peterson?
Florida goes with Liam Peterson, and Texas A&M is going with sophomore left-hander Justin Lampkin. Interesting switch. Interesting. Lampton's made just one appearance so far this postseason. Back on June 2nd, he recorded one out against Louisiana and gave up 2 earned runs. He has a 5.73 ERA in 55 innings this year. Now, I think you should throw your ace, Prager. But it's interesting. I asked one of my buddies what he thought, who covers Texas A&M, and he says it's their way to try to win the tournament. He was going to have to pitch Lampkin. He was going to have to pitch at some point, and then they'll use Cortez as the backup whenever they need to. And Cortez has been one of the best pitchers in the entire country down the stretch. So Texas A&M, you can look at Florida having played them and beat them at home. The teams that met in March are not the teams that will be meeting on June 15th in Omaha. But you go through a lot. Injuries.
Florida's a perfect example
teams.
of that.
You grow up a lot. You learn who you are. You figure out an identity throughout the season. You start playing to that. So I don't take much from that, other than it's probably an easy scout for both coaches because they already have files on each other and they've seen a lot of each other. So other than that, hey, we didn't have to spend as much time making the scouting report. I don't know that you take much from it, but it should be a great game. And Florida baseball gets the night slot, even though Florida football did not get many night slots.
Yeah, that's and again, they are in bracket 2 with not only A&M but NC State and Kentucky as well. Those 2 teams will play at 2 p.m. on Saturday on ESPN, followed by Florida and A&M, and then the elimination game will pick back up on Monday at 2 p.m., followed by the winner's bracket game at 7 p.m. So a lot of action to come.
And
go ahead.
For fans who don't understand, the College World Series is essentially 2 different 14 tournaments. You have bracket A and then bracket B. They'll play on separate days, and then the champion of each bracket plays in the World Series final, which is why I said the only time Florida would play Florida State would be in a final, and that goes for the other teams that played today: Tennessee, North Carolina, and Virginia.
And again, if you guys are not subscribed to Gators Online and not only want to keep up with Nick's baseball coverage, but a really cool feature at Gators Online that came out today, an exclusive with Florida President Ben Sasse, who, Nick, I don't think he's done many interviews, if not certainly not with Florida media since he took the job and kind of getting himself established as the president. But you were able to catch up with him in Omaha and have an awesome Q&A with him about this baseball team and obviously his involvement with the athletics program without, giving too much juice away, because I want to encourage folks to go read it. But how was it visiting with Sasse and hearing some of the things he had to say? Obviously, he's a big baseball guy.
Yeah, well, I've been asking for an interview for a while. I understand he was busy, and it was cool to speak with him to get his opinions. He's at baseball a lot. He's had a lot of baseball games. I chirped at him one time from the press box because he was holding a beverage and a foul ball came right at him and he didn't catch it. And I chirped at him. He told me I said one hand, and I said no excuses. But he's from Nebraska. He grew up, just over an hour from Omaha. He was a senator of this state. So I think he has a unique perspective as a kid coming to this game, going to Rosenblatt as a senator, knowing what kind of financial event this is for the city of Omaha. And then he's watched a ton of baseball. He's watched a ton of Florida baseball to get his opinions. I did ask him, and if you're listening to this to the podcast at this point now, answer this in the comments for us. I asked him, would you rather get in the batter's box against Jack Caglione and try to get a hit, or get on the mound and pitch to him to try to get him out? No intentional walks allowed. He gave me an answer there. I asked that on Twitter as well, and I just don't think a lot of people on Twitter understand that 95 is very fast. Very fast.
Yeah, he that was a cool exchange that you guys had, that he said I'll pitch to Jack. I want to see him send it out of the park. Just be able to watch it from that perspective.
I do appreciate, he says, intentional walks suck. Salute. Listen, sometimes they're necessary, but my goodness, Jack gets intentionally walked a lot. I hope he gets something to hit out here in Omaha. Getting close to tying the all-time career record. One more home run, he does that. 2, he takes over, and it's fun. Didn't expect to be out in Omaha probably a month ago, Zach, but always glad to be here. It is a treat for sure.
That's why we show up and cover the games, Nick. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think I had a great text from a friend here. It was on Sunday after Florida's game with Clemson. And he said, it's funny. We go to literally hundreds of games in our lives. We go because every now and then you get to see one as good as the one we saw yesterday.
Yeah.
And that's true. You go to the park and sometimes you see a 15-1 stinker.
Yeah.
Sometimes you go to the park and you get treated to 5 hours of classic baseball.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you go to the park and the Gators just put it on them, and that's
sometimes you go to the park and it rains.
Yes. Well, Nick, you've been going to the park all season long. I'm glad that your season is extended, although I'm sure your wife Lo is not too pleased, but she knows what she signed up for, marrying a baseball writer. So, well, that'll do it for this edition of the Gators Online Show. We will not have a show next week. Nick obviously will be away, hopefully still away. I'll be away as well. So the next time that we join you guys, it will be after the College World Series finals. So we'll see what we're talking about and how deep of a run Florida can make. But the fact that they're here and that we get to talk about it and keep watching this team is really incredible. And Nick, you've done a bang-up job covering them all season long, and I'm glad it gets to get extended a few more weeks. Enjoy Omaha, my friend.
I will. About to head out and enjoy the city and enjoy some baseball, Zach.
All right, well, we will see you guys in a couple weeks. Appreciate you all following us along throughout the summer months, and enjoy this time in the College World Series, and we'll be back in a couple weeks to see how the Gators did. For Nick Del Torre, I'm Zach Abaverdi. We'll see you guys next